Hi, everyone. My name is Justin Bush. I'm the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife's Aquatic Invasive Species Policy Coordinator. Really pleased to be here to talk a little bit about the concern that we have in the state of Washington about quagga mussels, and thank you all for organizing this. Wanted to start off with talking a little bit about priorities in the state of Washington, and our State Invasive Species Council analyzed over 700 different invasive species and looked at the economic, the environmental, the cultural, all the different types of impacts, as well as the ability to prevent those problems or manage them. And wanted to point out that the quagga and the zebra mussel is the singular most impactful species of those 700 that were analyzed. Not going to go really into depth because I feel like this has been well covered, but in the state of Washington, we have actually performed an economic study looking at the potential economic impacts of quagga and zebra mussels to our hydroelectric facilities statewide. So looking just at hydropower infrastructure, we know that quagga and zebra mussel establishment will cost over $100 million annually. This doesn't consider fish passage infrastructure. It doesn't consider irrigation. It doesn't consider drinking water facilities or any other type of system. And it also doesn't consider management or eradication. It's really just keeping those hydroelectric facilities running. We also know that fisheries are very important to the state of Washington. They provide over 16,000 jobs and over $500 million in income annually. And then fisheries are also so much more than money. There are things that are priceless, like treaty protected resources, and just really what it means to have salmon and steelhead in our waters. So we really can't put a dollar figure on that, and it's something that we really don't want to lose. Looking a little more broadly at infrastructure impacts, there are 28 public utilities in the state of Washington. 14 of those provide drinking water. We know from other states that surface water diversions and drinking water systems can be heavily impacted. We know that there is over $5 billion annually in irrigated crop production, and that total wouldn't be completely impacted, but some percentage is an astronomically high number as well. And then in the state of Washington, we know that recreation contributes over $26 billion annually to our economy. And looking at some of the photos that Stephen Phillips showed, we can expect heavy impacts for recreation, the ability to move watercraft. We are also thinking about indirect impacts. We know that the southern resident killer whale, for example, preys for portions of its diet on Chinook River, Columbia River Chinook, for example. And so there will be indirect impacts to other threatened endangered species. We're thinking a lot about the impacts to fish hatcheries. And then overall, we saw that state of Idaho close water bodies to the public, which limits recreational access, which is a heavy concern as well. I'm not going to show the distribution map of quagga and zebra mussels once again, but wanted to show the life cycle. And the planktonic villagers were detected in Idaho's waters. Those can actually float for up to 1 month before they settle. And then it takes more than one mussel, adult mussel, to spawn and create villagers. So that's all to say that we're very alarmed in the state of Washington about the situation in Idaho. We're very hopeful, but we're also planning for the worst. And I think Blaine Parker put it best in that this is a wake-up call. Also wanted to point out that from Twin Falls to Oregon's waters, it's 185 river miles and 375 river miles to the state of Washington. So just wanted to point out that the planktonic villagers can float for up to a month. And what we have been told by Idaho Power, for example, is that waters can reach Washington's boundary in a week approximately. So thinking that the villagers can float for up to 30 days, really commend Idaho for the rapid response treatment. We're very much hoping for the best, but I feel like we're at significant risk and we're very concerned in Washington. So we've been concerned for quite a while. We've been taking efforts to increase our readiness for almost 20 years now. And also just wanted to point out that we have watercraft inspection stations at our borders as part of the network that Stephen Phillips alluded to. And in Washington, we've been finding and intercepting over 20 mussel-fouled watercraft for the past few years. So while we are hoping for the best in Idaho and in the Snake River, we really are facing an imminent threat on a number of different fronts. Our tactic has been perimeter defense. When something is found, it is decontaminated, and we have a variety of decontamination systems statewide. And we'll position these across the state so that if we intercept an infested watercraft or other aquatic conveyance, we can quickly respond. Just note that these are available upon request for use, and so if you have equipment with noxious weed seeds or other things, definitely communicate with us, and we can help you get a decontamination. And so when we want to prevent something, when something's found, we want to decontaminate it. We also have a comprehensive monitoring network statewide to try to find the very first introduction of quagga zebra mussels into our waters. And we regularly sample over 124 water bodies and 300 some sites. And we use a matrix looking at different criteria of usage in order to assign a value for how often we should be monitoring it. And we will be increasing monitoring substantially in the Snake River, as you'll see in a moment. Just want to acknowledge that we can't do this alone. I think that's true for every jurisdiction with invasive species. We partner with public utilities and tribal nations, such as the Spokane Tribe of Indians and the Confederate Tribes of the Colville Reservation. We also are taking steps to partner with the Kalispel Tribe of Indians to increase early detection monitoring in, that should say, the Pend Oreille River in the next year. So really consider this to be an invitation to talk about how we can partner, because we feel like we need to increase our monitoring overall. So our monitoring results in the state of Washington, we're using the variety of sampling techniques shown in the photos I didn't really have time to touch on, including plankton tows, artificial substrates, eDNA, water quality samples, ponar grabs of the bottom of the water body, as well as visual surveys. And just wanted to point out that we have never detected quagga zebra mussels in the state of Washington. You can also see that we substantially increased effort in 2023, and that's due to the situation in Idaho. When we learned about the Twin Falls quagga mussels in September, we were actually finished with early detection monitoring for the year, but we redeployed our monitoring teams to the Snake River, added additional monitoring sites, and the results you can see here. We also took calcium samples. Calcium is somewhat low in the area, which is somewhat of a limiting factor, but it's high enough that we are certain that there could be both establishment as well as persistence of the mussels. We've been preparing for a response for numerous years. We've actually been fortunate in the state of Washington to do an on-the-ground operations focused exercise in 2019. If you scan that video, you can actually see a video showing some of the response activities and the coordination across jurisdictions. This was done at Lake Roosevelt with the Spokane Tribe of Indians, the Confederate Tribes of the Colville Reservation, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, as well as the National Park Service. And here you can see some photos showing some of those operations that included containment as well as a mock treatment. And thinking about some of the challenges Blaine Parker spoke about anadromous fish and other species of concern, for us, we're putting a lot of emphasis into containment systems, which may allow us to do a treatment in some of those sensitive areas. So in the state of Washington, we're really seeing this as a wake-up call. And we are actively seeking federal financial assistance, summarized here. And we are highly concerned about this because of the distance and proximity to waters and the unknowns of establishment. Oh, excuse me. And we were successful in the 2024 supplemental to receive $1.81 million in new state general funds, which we're using to leverage an equivalent amount federal funds from the US Army Corps of Engineers that we plan to use between July 1, 2024 and June 30th, 2025. And we have some specific actions we'll be taking, and we're definitely looking for partnerships. So one of the initial actions we're taking, we're actually implementing now. We were able to observe the treatment in Idaho, and we believe that our rapid response plan, while a great framework for response, is not sufficient for the impending emergency that we're facing. So we've executed an agreement with Four Peaks Environmental to update our state response plan. That process is underway, but we're definitely seeking your input. So the takeaways here are that we believe that we need to do site-specific planning or categorizing different types of water bodies. We would then take that treatment matrix to better understand the tools and techniques that are available for rapid response. This plan will be completed by June 30th, 2024, with additional dependencies that we've determined are needed, such as enhanced prevention strategies prior to response, improved communications plans, both pre-response during that initial attack phase, like that Idaho had gone through recently, as well as long-term management if we're unsuccessful in eradicating the problem. We also are going to be taking actions to look at infrastructure like fish hatcheries, irrigation systems, and other infrastructure to create mitigation system scoping analyses, looking at the systems that could be purchased and installed in irrigation systems or in other infrastructures so that we can long-term manage the problem and mitigate it. Sorry, buddy, my allergies are really acting up today. So wanted to get this out. So we believe that we will have a draft available and we can send to this network, for example, or anyone that's interested. We would like to have tribal government review for 30 days, coinciding with a webinar where we can present on some of the improvements we've made and solicit feedback on specific areas. We then will go through the formal State Environmental Policy Act consultation and comment period, where we will then post that publicly and receive feedback from all entities for 14 days. So I mentioned the funding that we receive from our state legislature. We'll speak briefly to some of the actions that we will be taking starting July 1. And definitely consider this to be an invitation to speak more about the actions and where your tribal nation may fit in. Based on our experience, the incident command system and multi-agency coordination across jurisdictions is the best approach for managing new invasive species problems. We will be developing a multi-agency coordination group for the state of Washington that includes both internal and external partners, including tribal nations, federal agencies, regional governments, state and local governments, and other partners. If you would like to be a part of this, definitely communicate with me and we will be working on that starting July 1. We know that we are not fully staffed and protected at our borders. So we will be fully staffing the Southeast region mandatory watercraft inspection stations in Clarkston as well as Pasco. Excitingly, we will be procuring and deploying another muzzle sniffing dog, specifically supporting Southeast region's check stations. And then we will be really increasing our Snake River Middle Columbia early detection monitoring. And we'll be doing this by creating one additional monitoring team. Currently, we have 3 stationed across the state. We'll be developing a 4th, and that will just specifically be focusing on the Snake River in the Middle Columbia. And that will be their singular area of focus for monitoring in 2024. We also know that quagga and zebra mussels can be spread other than by downstream movement in infested waters or by watercraft that are moved across the states. And we're very concerned about potential movement through live fish or other conveyances, such as the pet trade, in the recreational transportation as well. So we will be taking actions to address those pathways. And then we also feel that we're not prepared enough. And Stephen Phillips mentioned we're going through a process to seek rapid response funding through the Army Corps of Engineers. This is both for planning as well as procurement of supplies that we would anticipate needing in a rapid response. We also want to understand the risk to infrastructure. Stephen showed a UV treatment facility installed at a hydroelectric facility. We don't fully understand the scope of those types of treatment systems and where they might be installed, or how long that may take, or what that cost may be to install them into irrigation systems, fish hatcheries, or other critically important infrastructure points. And so we will be contracting out a study to analyze what exists, where they may fit in, and then we will visit sites to specifically come up with an action plan. We anticipate being pretty expensive, and it may take a number of years, but this will be a scoping study. And then we realized that it's never been more important to clean, drain, dry your watercraft and your equipment. And there's never been a higher need for the public to participate in this. So we will be increasing communications and outreach, focusing on prevention, response, and growing overall awareness of this problem.
Just about 3 minutes left, Justin.
Thank you. So the takeaways are that in September of 2023, really the world shifted, and the most significant invasive species event of this generation may have occurred. We're seeing this as a really high risk situation. There are a lot of uncertainties about establishment and treatment efficacy in Idaho, but what we're saying is that there are no uncertainties about the economic risk or the uncalculated environmental catastrophe that is on the precipice of this generation. We're actively seeking federal financial assistance, and we've received additional state funds. We are updating our state response plan and invite partnership. And then we're considering additional short and long-term needs and actions. We may be requesting additional funding in the future from our state as well as from federal agencies. And then finally, clean, drain, dry actions have never been more important. So we all need to work together to spread that message and that awareness so that we can prevent the spread of quagga mussels or any other aquatic invasive species. With that, would love to continue the conversation. Didn't have a whole lot of time today, but that's just my direct contact information. And I believe we've got time for questions after this.